Welcome in the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app, whether that's Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, or any of the others. Also, we're on Dash Radio. Download the Dash Radio app for free. Search for Nothing But Net. We're there every day at 7 p.m. Also, my new show on OnsideRadio.com. Ira Winderman will be in studio with me tomorrow at 10:30. So that should be interesting. So make sure you check that out. That's OnsideRadio.com. You can find the 5 Reasons Sports Show on all the same podcast apps. You can find 5 on the Floor. Also, 5reasonsports.com for all the latest articles by Brady Hawk before the events actually occur. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is what actually Brady should be doing since he knows what's going to happen. But this is MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag. It's that time of year when divisions are decided, champions are crowned, and legends are born. It's the time for the NFL playoffs. You waited and watched all year as your team rose to the top, or in the Dolphins' case, fell just short. But now it's your turn to win big. You've heard the name just about everywhere. MyBookie, they're the industry's leading online sportsbook and casino. It's not hard to understand why. They've got thousands of lines to bet on all your favorite sports. They do have the most props. It's not even close. NFL, NBA, college ball, MMA, soccer, everything. They have all of it. Take advantage of MyBookie's prop builder and live in-game betting. That's the most fun because you get to make up for your mistake, where every single run, throw, and touchdown is another chance for you to put cash in your pocket. Visit their mobile-friendly website today. Get your deposit matched halfway up to $1,000. Just use the promo code 5 on the floor, FIVE on the floor when you make your first deposit. The best part is they make it simple with a variety of ways to deposit instantly, including credit card, bank transfer, Bitcoin, and more. Whether you're at home or on the go or on your laptop or on your phone, it's not too late to make your New Year's resolution a resolution to get paid. Bet, win, and get paid. Use the code 5 on the floor. Spell it out at mybookie.ag. And now, today's emergency episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alex Toledo and Greg Sylvander, part of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here. I'll remember my name now. Ethan Skolnick back here on 5 on the Floor. We've got more than a full crew tonight. We've got Greg Sylvander. We've got Alex Toledo. We also have Adam Barai. You can follow him at Clutch. What is it? Clutch Adam NBA right now? Is that what you're going with, Adam?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, that's it. And I said your name correctly this time, so that's the first time. All right, we're coming to you on an afternoon. We were not anticipating doing this, although after James Harden turned in one of the laziest performances I've ever seen yesterday because he basically out-Jimmy, which is what we talked about for the past couple of months, and then basically just walked off the podium, dropped the mic and didn't want to be in Houston anymore, made it very clear publicly. He has been traded. So here is the trade, first reported by Woj and Shams, but here's what the deal looks like. The Rockets give up James Harden, okay? This is what they get. Victor Oladipo, remember him? I can't pronounce Rodion Kuric's name. Can somebody do that for me, please?
Rodion's Kuch, I believe.
Gracias, Alex. Appreciate it. Dante Exum, I did not know he was still a thing. 4 unprotected first-round picks. Brooklyn, 2022, 2024, 2026, Milwaukee, 2022, and 4 unprotected first-round pick swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. So 4 pick swaps, 4 unprotected picks, 3 of them from Brooklyn, 1 of them from Milwaukee. The Nets, they get James Harden. The Pacers, for giving up Oladipo, they get Karis LeVert. The Cavs, who got involved in this as the 4th team. We've always told you there would be multiple teams involved, not just 2, but maybe 3 or 4. There were 4. The Cavs get Jarrett Allen, very good big from the Nets, and Taurean Prince. Okay, we're going to start with Adam. Take us through this process because you have some insight. We've talked a lot on the strings. We've been talking about this much. You were the first anywhere. Nobody's giving you credit. You were the first anywhere to talk about Harden's displeasure with Houston. It got worse. He got out. But you have told us that a trade like this could have happened a while ago. Explain.
So I believe around a month ago when we had a bunch of Brooklyn Nets reporters saying that a Brooklyn deal was on the finish line between James Harden and the Nets, I later found out that that was in fact true. That prior to the season beginning, James Harden and Kevin Durant were actually celebrating a trade to Brooklyn, and that the fact that James Harden never had an agent screwed the whole deal up. And I don't know how James Harden could have screwed it up, but a deal to Brooklyn was done in the eyes of James Harden. It was done to the point where he was celebrating at a club with Kevin Durant. So this deal was always in the works, but the fact that it broke apart led other teams into the picture, teams like the Heat, teams like the Sixers. So I do believe that since this deal has been completed now, the Nets were always trying to get James Harden at the price that they wanted him at. But it came to a point where the Nets said, okay, we need to get James Harden in our building. Enough is enough. We need to finish this deal now. So in the end, James Harden goes to where he wanted to go. I believe that Philly was originally where he wanted to go, and the Kevin Durant Brooklyn Nets thing was a little overhyped. But nonetheless, he still ends up in at least one of his two preferred destinations.
All right, so Adam, let's follow on this, and I'm going to bring Greg and Alex in on the ramifications and all the rest of that stuff. Okay, the Heat were in the mix on this thing. Harden was interested in the Heat were one of the teams he was interested in coming to. Obviously, the Heat right before the season kind of called off the dogs, at least publicly. You know, there was, you know, the tweets that went out from, I guess, 4 beat guys. Okay, obviously a text string of some kind that I was not invited to because we were out front on a lot of this stuff. We were kind of thrown under the bus. I understood why they did it because, you know, you don't want your players going into the season kind of looking over their shoulder, wondering what's going to happen. And also, if it was a leverage play in any way, it makes sense to say that you're out because the Rockets were asking for too much. How much were the Rockets asking for from the Miami Heat?
I mean, from everything that I've heard, and I tried to do some recon on this when the Shams news dropped today about Miami's involvement and if they still were interested and that kind of thing. And I got a definitive no, they were out. And obviously that looks like that was accurate. But it came down to that there was essentially a certain amount of draft capital, or a superstar player that Houston wanted. But I think the draft capital was actually the real driving factor here. And for Miami to match that or match the superstar talent that they maybe could have acquired from Philadelphia, it didn't mean that they were going to lose one of the guys or 2 of the guys or 3 of the guys. It was going to be all of them and all of the picks and absolutely everything. And I just don't think Miami was willing to go there. So, you know, obviously on to the next one.
Okay. Now we talk about all of them. Just let's clarify, because this is stuff that we've been talking about on our threads for months and hinting at and sometimes reporting, but all of them basically meant Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, who the Heat did not want to include, Precious Achiuwa, KZ Okpala, Kendrick Nunn, the contracts of Olynyk and of Iguodala to make the thing work, okay, which might have been shipped somewhere else in a multi-team trade because I don't know that Houston would have had a lot of value for them. And then ultimately, as you mentioned, picks, right? Adam, and I'm going to bring Alex in after this, but Adam, that's your understanding? That was essentially not what the Heat was offering, but what Houston wanted.
That's what Houston wanted for a deal to be done that day, and Miami just didn't want to. We all know what I wanted. I would have done, but...
What you would have done is totally irrelevant to this particular discussion. Right. We will get into that another time. You will have time for that. I just want to get into the specifics of why it happened and why it didn't happen. All right. So Alex,
can I ask a question of Adam, by the way?
Yeah. Alex, jump in. Mm-hmm.
So was it also 3 picks and 3 pick swaps? So was it a deal like that? Do you happen to know that?
Well, that's the other thing. Pick swaps too. All the pick swaps, all the picks from OKC that OKC has, it's everything.
That's relevant.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about everything, basically. I mean, Houston wanted everything. I understand, Adam, and again, I debate maybe for here, maybe for another time, and you would have done it. To me, it's just there was a line where you couldn't cross it. Now, final thing on this, and then we're going to evaluate the trade. Adam, do you think there was any opportunity after the Heat backed out because so much was asked for that they could have jumped back in? Because there was these circumstances over the past couple of weeks where it was sort of looked like it was becoming untenable for Houston. Brooklyn didn't get off to the best start. I know they've got the Kyrie situation that we're going to talk about. Didn't seem like Daryl Morey wanted. Adam, you believe that Morey offered Simmons, correct?
Yeah, he offered him up to the last second, and up until Woj basically said no, he's going to the Nets. Simmons was offered.
Okay. All right. So in light of all that, was there ever in your view, and whatever the Heat said publicly, was there ever in your view or your reporting an opportunity for the Heat to get back into this at some lower price point?
No, I don't think so. I think if they wanted James Harden, it was all or nothing. So I don't think there was any price point that they could have jumped into and been able to get James Harden.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the next part of this. The trade itself. We've talked about Oladipo a lot too. I don't know that anybody really had Oladipo being part of this thing. Vic got off to a really good start this season. I think I had some regrets about maybe the Heat not getting in on him when they had the opportunity. I know, Alex, you were kind of at the forefront of that, believing that Vic was going to kind of salvage things. Let's look at the returns for the three teams here. In your view, Alex, I'll start with you. How did Houston do?
So this one was weird for me, especially that you brought up the Oladipo angle, because that's what made it weird, right? So I think I'm trying to look at this deal, and I completely understand why they would do, the 4 picks and 4 pick swaps. Like, that's a hell of a way to start off a rebuild, especially when they've traded so many. So in reality, and we've seen some of it broken down, by the way, that a couple of those, and like you said earlier in the pod, what is it, Milwaukee and Brooklyn that they're getting from? So those might be some late picks. But regardless, it is a hell of a way to rebuild. And they gave away, 4 first-round picks to get some of the guys that they got. Did they trade 4 first-round picks to get Russ?
They dumped.
Do I have that right?
Or 3, but otherwise your point stands. They're restocking the cabinet essentially.
Yeah. So I get that part for sure. They had to do it. They just wasted so much of it during the Harden era, and they had to do that, right? But the Oladipo part is weird to me because they had LeVert, who is 2 years younger than Oladipo, who is cost controlled, by the way, for the next couple of years. I was just looking at it, and it's around 17, 18 million a year. And Oladipo is a free agent this summer, and he's going to expect something close to whatever his max is. And it's going to be significantly more expensive than Karis LeVert, who, again, is 2 years younger. So that part doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The only thing that really stands to reason is that maybe they let him walk. But I don't understand, because the thing with Tobin Fertitta
let me throw this at you, Alex. Let me throw this at you. Could they trade him?
That's okay. So that's where I wanted to get with you guys.
And that's potentially where, he's an asset. And that's potentially where the Heat could get back involved in this picture if they wanted to. And you also have PJ Tucker sitting there also on that roster.
Yep.
Greg, is that a target that would make sense now for Miami?
On March the 4th, yes. There's obviously going to be some restrictions related to the timing on that.
Right.
But yes, I do. I found it curious, just like Alex did, about bringing in Depot. You either think that you're about to max him out and he's not going to be able to turn down that max offer to stay there, which feels like a weird thing to do when you're kind of rebuilding.
Why would they? We know that Fertitta is so cheap. They have Wall there making a super max.
Yeah,
it's just going to be an expensive, barely a playoff team. It doesn't, something's off there.
So then option 2 is you're going to reroute him to another team, and you felt that he was a better asset to reroute than maybe the guy that you were getting. And then the other one is that you just want whoever it was off of your salary cap as soon as possible. And that happened sooner with Depot than it did with LeVert. I think it's probably a combination of all of that. I found the trade to be, from a draft capital perspective, great for Houston. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's weird. Unless, if they flip Depot and they get a nice package from him, I would suspect as they get closer to the deadline, they're going to go fishing for teams that Oladipo will be willing to agree to an extension when he's dealt. And that will kind of narrow down the list and see who's really serious about it. And that's the way that they're going to acquire some assets in return for a guy like Oladipo after March 4th.
Well, here's the other thing about it, Greg. We know that Houston likes some of the Heat's players because they wanted all of them, right? So, again, a lot of this is whether or not the Heat wants Oladipo. But we've all reported they weren't thrilled with the way Oladipo conducted himself against them in the playoff series. They were not impressed by it, but he has played pretty well this year, and he does give them some of what they need. And we'll have another conversation maybe about, we need to do a whole pod about Tyler because obviously, a lot of this was about Tyler, and I don't want to get into it too much here, but yeah, I mean, that's a conversation that we probably should have. All right, let's get to part 2 of this. Okay, the next part, because the Houston part, I mean, that's the first thing that jumped out to me. Why do they need Oladipo? Like, are they
got no prospects. I just can't let it go. They got no, like, I don't consider the guys that they got, Exum and the guy that Ethan.
No, Exum's not a prospect anymore.
Like, these are not prospects. So all they literally did that for was draft capital, unless you're really planning on having some equitable time with Depot.
But that's the other thing, Greg. If the idea is draft capital and you're looking so many years down the road, then there is no use for Oladipo, because the clock on Oladipo and Wall is nowhere near the clock for those players who, some of them are in like 6th grade right now. Like that's the part. There's another trade coming from Houston. They're not done. And I'm with you. I mean, that owner is not going to pay Victor Oladipo the max. He's just not. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And all of this has felt like a means to another end. All right, you know what? We're going to talk about the other 2 parts of this in a second. I want to tell you about a great sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can find them at 5reasonsrealtor.com. Do you know that now is the best time to sell a house in South Florida, as prices are at record levels? Your property's probably worth a lot more than you realize. If you're interested in finding out how much, reach out to the guy who does a value play segment with us, a big Heat fan. He's even got Heat in his email. Let me recommend that you consult Eric Brown at 5reasonsrealtor.com. That's FIVE, reasonsrealtor.com, the official real estate advisor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Eric's a real estate professional with several years of experience representing clients from all walks of life. He's got a Wharton School business education, makes him uniquely qualified at identifying property value, negotiating on your behalf, and providing an unmatched level of service. If you're considering selling, buying a home in South Florida, or you just want to chat about Heat ball, contact Eric at 305-967-9089. That's 305-967-9089, or go to 5reasonsrealtor.com. If he can't help you, he'll recommend someone who can. Find out what his specialized professional business approach can do for you today. That's Eric Brown at 5reasonsrealtor.com, the official real estate advisor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. All right, let's get to the rest of the trade. Real quick here. The Pacers basically sub out Victor Oladipo and that expiring contract, and a guy who made it pretty clear he didn't want to be there last year but played pretty well, for Caris LeVert, who jumped out in the bubble. Still a relatively young player. He's kind of entering his later 20s, but he's a relatively young player. And he has scored really well, especially since Dinwiddie and Kyrie. Kyrie's gone on sabbatical again, and Dinwiddie got hurt. What do we think? I'll start with you again, Alex. What do we think of the idea of the Pacers, who look like a pretty damn good team so far? Whenever they get TJ Warren back, Sabonis has been great. The coaching seems to have unlocked them a little bit. What do we think of Caris LeVert in for Victor Oladipo?
It's a pretty clean fit, and like I said before, it's cost controlled for them. And I think there were some worries there about their ownership wanting to pay all those guys. So I think it's just going to be kind of a nice little tax cut for them. And not that I care about what they pay or not, but I just think that's probably part of the reasoning of why they did it, because they get somebody who can be an Oladipo replacement, who's a good player, and I think is going to be a very good fit with what they're doing, right? Like, they're running a lot of Sabonis as like their Bam, but I think at an even higher usage, and I think LeVert fits perfectly around that. And he's got Brogdon next to him, they've got Warren, they've got Miles Turner. I think they've got a nice team there. Like, they've obviously had a good start, so I think the Pacers as well as the Nets obviously came out as winners in this.
Adam, your thoughts on it and the Pacers' involvement in it?
I think the Pacers won the whole deal, to be quite honest.
Me too.
They traded an expiring that wasn't going to stay there in Victor Oladipo for 3 more years of a young, cost-controlled asset in Caris LeVert. I don't know how they were able to do this. I do not like this deal for Houston. If they had kept Caris and Jared Allen, I would have liked the deal a little bit more. But the fact that they just gave them away, I mean, the Cavs had to give up a Milwaukee first for Jared Allen.
Yeah,
I just don't.
Yeah, maybe they won.
They did well too, but Indy specifically, I feel like LeVert is going to fit in great there. You look at his stats this year: 18 and a half a game, 6 assists. I mean, like, he is the perfect complement to Brogdon in the backcourt. A lot of the stuff that they do with Turner and Sabonis, I think he's just going to be a perfect fit there. And he's kind of like an under the radar guy that they can cultivate. And that's like an indie project. I don't know. I really love that fit.
Well, in the same way that even though he's the second overall pick, Oladipo was kind of that. I mean, because Oladipo had been diminished by, Orlando. He really didn't jump out. OKC, he was better, but he was the consolation prize for Paul George. And, I will say this about Indy. They do a really good job of this. Like Pritchard, that whole group, like that, they do a really, you give up Paul George and you get Oladipo and Sabonis, a trade that a lot of people hated at the time. I like this one for them also. And again, we'll get into sort of, pecking order in the East as we go forward. But I think, once Warren's back, that starting lineup in Indy is really good. Like I think we have to start thinking about Indy as a serious threat in the Eastern Conference, like we talk about some of the others. But let's get to the Nets because I think a lot of people would say they're the big winner. Now, the Kyrie thing, I will not be surprised, guys. I said this before the season, if Kyrie retires at some point. I'm not going to say that what Stephen A. Smith says that he should retire. It's not my place to tell him what to do. But it does not seem like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem committed to this thing in any way. And he's already leaving Nash hanging. You got all the other issues with it. Adam, how much did the Kyrie situation, in your view, play into them making the move for Harden now?
I think it had a little bit to do with it because we don't know when Kyrie is coming back, but I don't think the Nets were thinking just about the short term for this deal. I think they were looking, okay, when Kyrie does eventually come back, what is this team going to look like? But I don't think they were motivated to do this deal right now solely on the fact that Kyrie Irving isn't with the team. But it is something to mention. It is an issue. It's a distraction for the team right now. But I don't know. I just don't see the Nets making a deal of this magnitude with Kyrie Irving as the main picture behind it.
Greg, they were able to keep some pieces here. They were able, the picks are the picks, and the Nets have done this, this is like generational with the Nets. They did it for old KG and old Pierce, and it didn't end up working out all that well because, as we know, Heat in 5, right? So that didn't work out that well. Sean Marks is a much more astute general manager than the guys that they had in there before. But then Billy King or the guys who made that trade. He's not a dumb guy. He comes from the San Antonio system. He was weird with the Heat. He did a great job rebuilding that thing. They didn't have to give up Joe Harris, but they did give up Allen. They've lost Dinwiddie for the season. They don't know where the hell Kyrie is. And now they've given up LeVert. Does this elevate? Durant is Durant, okay, and he's come back as Durant, but what are you expecting from them, Greg?
Well, at face value, they're the best team in the East. They're their favorite, and everyone should definitely look at the top heavy part of that roster and think about how the hell are we going to defend that in a 7-game playoff series? There's no doubt about that. But has anyone ever seen a super team crumble in year one because certain things don't go exactly right and there's chemistry issues or defensive issues or just you never know what happens. And yes, we have, because we witnessed the Big Three era and there was many other instances of such. So I just think, like, to crown them as the Eastern Conference champions, I'm not ready to do all that. I think that they have a lot to work out in terms of, from a defensive perspective, how that's going to shake out. I still am trying to figure out a team that can defend those three guys competently. I don't know that there's 3 players on one roster that can defend those 3 guys competently, but who knows what's up with Kyrie? Like, what if Kyrie doesn't come back? Then, like, that shakes up where we rank Brooklyn. So, I just think that ultimately, yes, it looks great on paper, but we've seen paper teams go down the drains many times.
Well, and also some of the moves they made in the offseason, like picking up Landry Shamet and others, it seemed like they were preparing for a move like this where they would have to give up some of that depth in the backcourt. First weekend, we thought they'd give up Dinwiddie. Alex, Durant, Harden, Westbrook did not win a title together with Ibaka. Now, they were at a different stage, obviously, and they lost to, one of the great teams. That Heat Big Three team is one of the great teams of the past 20 years. Harden is a better player now. He's a little bit different, obviously, than he was before. He's a better player. Durant has come back kind of as that Durant. And Kyrie, if he's healthy, gives you, the electricity that Westbrook did, but I mean, not healthy, but I mean, sort of healthy in the mind in terms of wanting to actually be there. How do you see them fitting together?
That's the thing, right? Like, I honestly can't tell you how it's going to work. Like, I think they're all going to have to buy in and, really get that ball moving, right? And I'm not talking about having some sort of egalitarian motion offense with those three guys. Like, it's not, I think that's more ideal than anything, right? I'm just talking about a way to make it all work, right? And I think they have to all buy in, because I don't think it's going to be the your turn, my turn thing. I think that's I don't like the way that we've kind of made it a black and white thing. Like, I think they're going to be able to make it work. Do I think they're going to win the championship? I don't know. I think they up their chances. I think they're firmly the best team in the East as far as paper, like Leif said. I still got to see what happens in the playoffs. I still got to see how they look on the court. But it's just going to be really, really tough to eliminate a team with those types of weapons in a playoff scenario when those types of weapons get amplified, right? Like, we've seen what Kyrie can do as the second star, and now he's going to be the third. And Harden is, 20 times the player he was in OKC, who put up like 13 a game in the finals that year. Like, obviously, he's got to get back in shape and all that. And the Kyrie thing is a real factor, because we don't know what's going to happen with him. And listen, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to try to defend him or anything and what's going on with him and his team. I just don't know the motives. So I don't want to say anything positive or negative about Kyrie. I just don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, if he's going to be there or not. And that obviously affects what happens on the floor. Either way, I feel like they're probably going to be the favorite just because of having Durant and Harden on your team. And Durant he's already back. He's already back.
Yeah, he's back.
And so I think they have just enough depth.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Durant by himself makes me fear Brooklyn more than if they had Harden and Kyrie as a duo,
No doubt.
and Durant was not a part of the conversation. Like,
Greg, what's LeBron thinking right now? What do you think? I mean, because it's always about LeBron. I mean, you got to go through LeBron and AD.
He you know what? Like, I can pick LeBron's brain. I sound like a total idiot.
I mean, I used to be able to, but not anymore. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that he probably still thinks he can beat this team. I just have the feeling that with Davis and with the additions that they have, he's not scared of them. I think that there's certain elements of Kyrie and a defiance that Kyrie brings to a LeBron James matchup that I think maybe could lean in the Nets' favor. But where the hell is Kyrie Irving? So like, until we get that shit ironed out, I don't know how much we can really do the matchup thing.
And here's the other thing. And then you're going to do a guts check and then we're going to close. But the crazy thing about this, you mentioned Kyrie and the defiance there, Harden not sort of stepping up. I mean, the NBA, I don't think has ever wanted a finals more than they're going to want this finals. Like this, there is no chance that the Heat, Philly, Boston, nobody's getting a call in the playoffs. Nobody. This is the series that they want. Clippers, Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and they don't care who Brooklyn plays in the East. They want this matchup because not only do you have New York and LA, you got Durant and LeBron, you've got Kyrie and LeBron, and all the rest of this. All right, we're gonna go to a guts check here in a second, then we're gonna close. Adam, just any closing thoughts about this whole situation?
Philly and Milwaukee are gonna beat this Nets team as currently constructed. They don't have any big men on this roster.
You said Philly?
And so is Miami.
Embiid is going to devour DeAndre Jordan. I don't agree with you guys with this overwhelming comparison with the Lakers and the Nets, because I don't even know if they're going to get to the finals just off of Philly, because I think Embiid will destroy this team as currently constructed. And
you beat them 4 out of 7 times, even with him doing that, though?
No, but even if the Nets go to the finals, I think Anthony Davis is going to destroy this Nets team. This team is small. I just don't see it with them.
Well, but they can. There's still time to do something in that regard. They don't have any pick capital, but there's still time. There's buyout guys. There's other guys they may ask out. There are things that they can do. They
have all their second rounders.
Okay, they don't have a lot. Right. Okay. So, I mean, they can get a second round. They can get functional players. To me, they would have been better off if they could have gotten a PJ Tucker back in the trade, something along those lines to give them, a real front court player and who could defend. Right. And maybe the Heat will. And again, I would watch Tucker and Oladipo in Houston. I just think if you're Miami, you're looking at what your needs are right now. Like that might do it. But again, what do you have to give up? All right. We're going to cede the floor to Greg here. That's it. When we come back, Before we do, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, U-Break Wheel Fix. It's a wheel repair and refinishing company located in North Miami with 15 years of experience. They fix bent, cracked wheels, damage on the streets of South Florida. They got fast turnaround times on most repairs. They have the coolest Instagram account. Check it out. Go to U-Break Wheel Fix. It's U-Break Wheel Fix. They offer complete refinishing back to factory standards, but also on that IG account, you'll see like they have 5,000 different finishes to customize the look of your wheels, including the Vice colors. So don't spend money on wheels when you can renew them at U-Break Wheel Fix. U-Break Wheel Fix offers a full line of custom wheels and tires for every vehicle application. They offer in-house repair and a complete vehicle customization. So call Mark and everybody else there at U-Break Wheel Fix today at 305-748-0112 or online again at ubreakwheelfix.com or check them out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Yelp. Mention 5 Reasons. This is the big thing. You get 15% off anything you do there. Refinishing, repair, coating, whatever it is you want to do, 15% off if you mention 5 Reasons Sports. All right, here we go. The rest of us are going to be silent here. It's time for a guts check.
I think everybody needs to get a grip. You got to stay together if you got the guts and you don't find the first door and run out of it.
There are no obstacles. There's no obstacles. All there are accusations and opinions. We have done this since 1995.
We'll find out what we're made of here if you got the guts.
This is Guts Check with Greg Sylvander.
Okay, so upon the announcement of the James Harden trade to Brooklyn today, my Twitter timeline was filled with a variety of Heat fans, some very disappointed, some disgruntled, some willing to move on. It was a mixed bag, but there is a very loud contingent of folks that are operating under the assumption that the Heat are done, that there's no way that they're going to be able to field a roster that can compete with what Brooklyn has. And that it's a reoccurring theme of all these players being available in Miami, missing out on them, whether, it be James Harden or the last 3 guys that they missed out on. And coming from somebody who really loves transactions, listen, I used to call into the Ed Kaplan's show and ask if the Heat were going to trade PJ Brown for Derek Coleman. I used to watch whether they were going to sign Mo Williams and check on the radio to hear about updates. I'm dating myself. I care about the transactions. I want them to make trades, but listen, we don't know who's going to become available. And I say this because when you look around the league, you never know the next guy who's going to become available. We've seen it time and time again that guys are available that we didn't see coming. And this is the biggest part of this that I want to drive the point home. And that's that everybody's operating like Miami needs a damn top 5 player or an all-star, an all-NBA addition to this team to contend and win a title. Who the hell says? They got to the finals with the roster that they had, and maybe it turns out that as they look around the league and they canvas and see what they can get, who's to say that they go to a team like Orlando and there's a player like Vucevic that could fit in, or John Collins, or whoever else may become available. I know we were looking at Bradley Beal and Kyle Lowry. The point is that 1, there's a lot of other fish in the sea, and 2, the fish that they need to get to win a title may not need to be a whale, although a whale is a mammal. And that is why I shall end Guts Check here.
Greg Sylvander, follow him at Greg Sylvander. Thanks to Anna Barai. Thanks to Alex Toledo. Thank you as well to our sponsors, mybookie.ag. Use the code 5 on the floor. Mention 5 Reasons at U-Break Wheel Fix. You'll get 15% off. And also our friend Eric Brown over at 5reasonsrealtor.com. Definitely work with him if you're buying or selling here in South Florida.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.